Hello and welcome to the Birds of the Round Table for another Loser Tuesday edition of the podcast. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can give me a follow on Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. Joined as always by the crew. Ryan, I got to change the intro. The Eagles didn't win. They haven't won in 2 weeks now. We just got to change things up a little bit. We're considering all things. We're considering, how to rebuild the intro to the podcast because we want it to improve. And so we're hoping that's going to happen this week. So give Ryan a follow on Twitter at Philly Sports PSA. Ryan, how you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm just the happiest guy alive. Yeah, it's tough being an Eagles fan right now, but when the time comes, at some point in this interview, I will have to address Eagles fans directly.
All right, I can't wait. Also joined by David. Give him a follow on Twitter at David Neese PHL. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm happy, healthy, looking forward to Ryan's Kenny Gainwell rant. That has to be what it is, right? All the touchdowns, all the rushing yards. I mean, he outperformed Saquon versus the Bears too, right? Like he's putting up real numbers, man.
Has Kenny Gainwell scored more touchdowns since the bye than the Eagles offense?
I mean, I'd take that bet without knowing. I'd put $10 on it. Might as well.
You would.
You would lose. He scored 2 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks, and they were in the same week, I think.
How about has he outperformed Saquon Barkley?
He's rushed for 356 yards and 3 touchdowns. 259 as a receiver with 2 touchdowns.
Wow, 600 all-purpose yards. Good.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's dive into it. The Eagles lose the Black Friday game in the all black. Black's a funeral color. Was Friday the funeral for the Eagles season? We're going to dive in and talk about, for the second time this year, the Eagles have lost back-to-back games, with that second loss coming on a short week. Last time they bounced back and they won 4 straight. Maybe that's in the cards this time. We can hope so, because suddenly Dallas is coming on, and the division could get a little dicey if Dallas wins that Thursday game against the Lions this week, because I don't think Dallas loses another non-Lions game this year. So some interesting things to talk about there. The Eagles currently have a 1.5 game lead, but we'll dive into this Bears game. Let's go defensive takeaway first. Ryan, what was your defensive takeaway in this one?
Yeah, it just seemed like they had no plan for the run game, and they knew they were being run on, and they still didn't have a plan for it. And again, I think we've gotten accustomed to this defense bailing out this offense, but yeah, I'm sure they're real tired of doing that, and so I don't necessarily put a lot of fault in the defense. I still think there were plenty of situations offensively that could have changed the tide, but yeah, outside of the run defense, I thought the pass defense was really well. Just for whatever reason, the combination of Swift and Montagai, Monangai, whatever his name is. Yeah, they just couldn't be stopped. It was embarrassing.
Yeah. It was a rough game for the run defense for the Eagles. And by the way, both times they've had a short week game after a loss, they got dominated in the trenches. I think for me, the biggest defensive takeaway I have from this game, honestly, is how bad the Eagles' rushing attack is, because you watch the things the Bears did in the run game, and then you flip over and you watch the Eagles just run inside zone and counter on repeat. And it's like, man, there were plays where they're just leaving edge defenders totally unblocked, and it's not read option. It's we've got a jet motion, and we've got the threat of a bootleg, and we're willing to do those things. And so we can just straight up ignore this guy to get double teams on your defensive tackles. And it was a really cool run game. Ben Johnson, tip your hat to him. He schemed up an awesome run game. And I guess something we could talk about is how bad the Eagles draft class looks right now, because Jahad Campbell plays 0 snaps in this game. Obviously, Makuba's hurt. Ty Robinson is a healthy scratch while Byron Young's playing 38 snaps, and Byron Young is literally unplayable in the NFL, and Ty Robinson can't get on the field over him. They got to get Byron Young off the field. I was saying that before the trade deadline, and here we are. And I know it was a lot of snaps, 87 total snaps. He plays 38 of them, but Brandon Graham plays 6 snaps. I mean, even Nolan Smith only played 34 snaps. His snap count hasn't been high since the bye. And so, Jalen Phillips made the big splash in week 1 and 2 with the Eagles. Weeks 1 and 2, he was with the Eagles, not week 1 and 2 of the season. But that's kind of fallen off, and you're just left with, like, we're kind of back to where we were pre-bye with the defensive front. And I don't know why Brandon Graham's not playing a little more. I mean, I would rather you kick him inside to be a defensive tackle than play Byron Young some of those snaps. I would rather you play a traditional 4-3 instead of putting 3 defensive tackles on the field and play your first-round pick at off-ball linebacker a little bit when you're struggling against the run. Like, I would have just liked to have seen him change something up, because it was clear that Ben Johnson knew what their response to getting gashed in the run would be, and he had responses to that too. And at a certain point, he was like, just throw something else out there and see what sticks. And so run defense has shown up a few times, and now it's shown up in different ways. It wasn't so much like condensed formations getting outside. They were getting gashed between the tackles. And so I think it's fair to start to be concerned about the run defense and if people are going to be able to take advantage of it down the stretch, because it doesn't matter how good your pass coverage is if that's what you're putting out there in run defense. So that's something they're going to have to get cleaned up. I thought they kind of got exposed in a different way, and hopefully we'll see some adjustments off of that. But David, what about you? What was your defensive takeaway?
After those 2 takes and your funeral intro, I feel like I'm at the Oscars with like memoriam things like floating over my head. Yeah, I agree with, a lot of what you said. And a lot of people point to, that 40 minutes to 20 minutes time of possession, the difference there as being a big reason of why the Eagles gave up all those rushing yards. But they started the game doing that. They gave up 84 rushing yards in the first quarter alone. And after the game, to touch on what you were discussing about how creative that run game was and the concepts they were using, the players expressed that the Bears' run blocking scheme and the cutbacks just simply caused them a lot of issues. They just weren't prepared for it. Jalen Carter manned up, said he needed to play better, just wasn't a good game. He also curiously said that they changed some things up with him this week, where he wasn't on the field for first and second downs as often. I have no idea who wanted to do that, but trash that concept, please. He definitely needs to be on the field more. That line's only going to go as far as they take him. To touch on Young, I think you and I both kept saying before the trade deadline, trade one, if for nothing else, you just raise the floor. Just because you eliminate him, you just get somebody else in there, and you become better by, addition by subtraction, basically. You just raise the floor there. And to touch on the draft class, not one person in this draft class was on the field, not one snap. And that's, it's not just because Makuba, is hurt, and it's not just because Nakobe Dean came back and took Campbell's role. It's also confidence in all these other players. And you had mentioned like going to a 4-3, but Fangio, says he's put a lot on Campbell's plate. I believe he has, but the fact that he can't get on the field, or they don't trust him to do that in that role, is a little concerning, because it's something he did do in college. So it is, especially in a game where there's, what'd you say, 87 snaps?
Yeah.
And he couldn't, just to have a fresh pair of legs on the damn field. I mean, he couldn't find his way for 25 snaps, 30 snaps. They were clearly gassed. They looked demoralized at times. It was, very, very frustrating game all around. So I do think the draft class has some concerns. Young, like you said, that being the biggest issue for me is that they're not able to mask that because they didn't, draft a defensive tackle in Ty Robinson, who, basically took over that role, which I think a lot of us thought he would.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots of things with the defense. Also, like, man, Sidney Brown was bad in this game too. And I saw that they've activated Marcus Epps. I firmly believe Marcus Epps will be the starter on Monday night. He should start over Sidney Brown, because the Bears didn't have a lot of success through the air, but it was not because of Sidney Brown, because he got burned multiple times and didn't have to pay for it. So rough game for Sidney Brown. Let's flip over to the offensive side of the ball, where it was a rough game for everybody. David, I'll throw it to you first this time. What was your top offensive takeaway?
That they didn't use the middle of the field in the run game or the pass game, essentially. Even with the Bears down multiple linebackers, Saquon touched the ball only 13 times. He was having a good yard per carry average. I felt like he should have been fed the ball more. And then you look at the other back, who everybody wanted to have a larger timeshare. It's almost in spite of all of that, Bixby doesn't get a single carry, which is, kind of crazy. We sit here and we talk about the importance of the run game. And we mentioned it last week, but if they're not able to run against the Chicago Bears, who the heck are they going to get well against? And I thought that they had a chance to do that this game, and the lack of carries for Saquon, was a little alarming. And I know there's a big contingent of the fan base that wants, Sirianni immediately fired, and, and they want to do all these extra things. And a lot of them are great points. Like I watch Shane's breakdowns, use empty, use duo, pony, play action, RPOs, add all of these things. But it's just not something this regime has done. They don't like deviating from what they believe wins. And they think if they execute the plays that they put in there properly and control the line of scrimmage, neither of which they've done this season, that they would win games. And, at some point, talent doesn't, kind of conceal the issues with the scheme. And I think you're kind of seeing that this season. They were able to get by on a lot of things, and due to the health of the offensive line, which has just caused tons of problems, they're not able to, master the things. What does he always say? Master the things that require no skill. Well, they're not doing that. And, they used to execute simple plays at a high level and it worked, and nobody's executing well at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, what's your top offensive takeaway?
Yeah, that, Jalen Hurts had a bad game. It is what it is. Obviously, it seems like anytime Hurts does anything, good or bad, it's always, talk. But yeah, I think for the first time in a long time, actually, he had a bad game. And listen, it happens. I'm not going to sit there and bash him and call him the reason why we lost the game and, all this. But, he was missing some open reads. That play to Devontae where we kind of threw it behind him that, obviously that could have potentially led to a kind of a walk-in touchdown for Devontae. And there were, a couple of other situations. And like you said, Shane, you have a team that is down three linebackers. So that means, on any other normal team, they're playing practice squad bums. And you don't take advantage of it. And the whole time I'm sitting there in the stands, I'm going, why are we not utilizing the middle of the field? Why are we not utilizing the middle of the field? It is there for the taking. And, that has to be in part with scheme and game plan. I just don't understand why it's almost like maybe they're trying to outthink themselves, but I don't know. You usually, you look at a team's weakness and you attack that. And if they, counter it, then you go and attack something else, but they're not even going after it as they should. So yeah, bad game for Hurts, really bad game plan. Yeah, par's the course. Hey, at least AJ Brown did his, right?
Yeah. The execution's bad, but this team's also schemed to fail. I don't even need to play this clip, but just look at this. It's 3rd and 3. The Bears are in dime personnel, so they're already playing light. There is not a linebacker there's no one between the hashes for 10 yards, and the A gap is wide open. And the Eagles drop back to pass on 3rd and 3. Again, against light personnel with no second level defenders and an open A gap. Like teams last year teams any of the last 5 years wouldn't have dared to ever show a look like that to the Eagles in that down and distance, and you just don't even have to respect the Eagles' run game anymore. And again, to tie that in with my defensive takeaway, that's coaching and that's design. Like, the Bears did so much cool stuff in the run game, and it wasn't just under center. Like, you could say, yeah, but we don't like to get under center, and so we can't do the bootlegs, we can't do the jet motions, we can't do those things. Well, they did a pop pass out of shotgun. They did a wham block out of shotgun. They were motioning tight ends in and then wham blocking out of shotgun. There was a lot of stuff that you could do. And so the Eagles' run game has no creativity. It has no execution. It's a travesty. And there's other things too. Like, I tweeted out a clip from my All-22 review for Patreon going through a specific play where the Eagles tried to run a swing pass to Saquon Barkley to the bottom of the screen, but the Bears had a guy chasing it because it's cover one man, so they couldn't throw that. But then on the backside, they had slant flat dialed up, which also doesn't work against cover one man because there's a guy standing right in the slant window. Like, you could run double slants and it would work because then your first slant clears the guy out. But they run slant flat, which never has a chance to work against cover one man. And so, to recap, they ran a play with a front side read that doesn't work against a specific coverage and a backside read that also doesn't work against the same coverage. And by the way, anybody want to take a guess what coverage the Bears run more than any other coverage this season? It's cover one man. And so this team is designed to fail. The execution's lacking. The coaching is bad. And I mean, the path forward to fix it, it comes from everybody. I mean, just to continue to quote the great Jason Kelsey, it's the whole team. And if they will take some time over this extra long break, because they don't play till Monday night, because heaven forbid the Eagles get a Sunday game this season. If they will take advantage of this long time, this long layover, and take a hard look in the mirror, all of this is correctable. I truly believe that. Like, I think there's minor, and I've talked about them online, but I think there's minor things that you can tweak in the pass game that would make it better. And independent from anything else, I think that would help you a lot. I think there's things that you can tweak in the run game. Now, the pass game stuff, some of it would be like adding things they haven't really done in the past. You can just go back to the run game you had last year that's not so vanilla and predictable, and that's going to make your pass game better, even if you don't change anything. You know, players executing better is certainly a part of that. There's so many things that, like, just a marginal small step could have a cascading effect. They just got to take one of those steps, and we've talked about it for weeks and they haven't done it, and I'm losing faith that they will because they came out of a bye week and they didn't do it. But, you know, maybe at a certain point they get embarrassed enough that they make a change, and I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. So hopefully they'll do it. I think it's certainly possible, but I'm starting to waver because I think there is so much hubris in that building that I just don't know that anything is going to change. So that's kind of where I'm at offensively. I don't know what my takeaway was overall out of that, but there you go. No player of the games. No player of the games in a loss like that. Let's go on. Anything else that anybody wants to call out on this game, takeaways before we move forward to Monday Night Football?
No, sir.
I'll read a couple comments here from Adam, and you guys drop some comments if you're watching live here. He said that Seth ripped the defense on his live stream today. He said Fangio actually got outcoached. Yeah, he did. And hey, that happens. It'll happen sometimes. I don't doubt Vic. I think Vic will make some adjustments. I would have liked to have seen some of them in this game, but he's earned my trust. He got outcoached this game, and it happens. And I trust that the defense will show up and look better next week. It's the offense that I'm not as sure about. And he also said Barrett Brooks said the Eagles' O-linemen were terrible. They blocked poorly and didn't finish through the whistle. I will also co-sign that. It was not a good game all the way around. So with that said, let's flip it forward and let's talk about the Eagles matchup with the Los Angeles Chargers. Mirrored records. They're both 8-4. Both in contention for the playoffs. Like the Eagles, the Chargers are also battling through some injuries, probably more devastating injuries than the Eagles have. Both of their offensive tackles are out. And I think they've got a couple more. I'm struggling to remember what they are off the top of my head, but I'll look it up here as we go. But let's go. Top matchup to watch. Eagles offense against the Chargers defense. Ryan, I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, obviously this is very contingent on who's actually going to be out there. I assume Herbert is playing. And there's talk that Marion Hampton is going to be activated off of IR, and he'll be available for this game as well. And that being said, whether it is Hampton or Vidal, whomever, the Eagles need to have a bounce back in the run defense, if only just for their own, sense of pride. It was a top 10 all-time worst, rush defense in Eagles history. They need to bounce back and have a decent run defense game. So I'm going to be looking for whomever is running the ball for the Chargers versus the Eagles front seven, and pray to God that they got embarrassed enough to motivate, because they can't ever have a game like that in one side of the ball or the other.
Yeah. All right, David, what about you? What's your top matchup to watch?
Just stay with defense then. It's the trenches. Everything they build, everything they do plays off of that. You hit the nail on the head. They're down 2 top offensive linemen. Herbert is playing likely with the broken left hand. If they can't dominate this offensive line, I feel like it's the same thing we said last week about the Eagles running game versus the Bears. But if they don't get well against the Chargers offensive line, I would find that more alarming than almost anything else going on. I alluded earlier to Jalen Carter and the way they used him. I don't think that will be a repeat in this game. Everything the Eagles defense does up front predicates off of him. So they need to get back to using him more. I don't know if it was, a snap management type of thing prior to the 80 snaps, just going into the game, if they were trying to, dial that back some. But they have to win the trenches. And if they can get pressure, interior pressure, like you said earlier about Jalen Phillips being just disappeared the past 2 weeks, you'll probably see him get healthy in this game if they can get, penetration from there. And Herbert's the kind of guy who has thrown 4 interceptions, I believe, in last year's playoff game. So in a big game, you rattle him. He is turnover worthy for a couple picks, which is how this defense gets healthy and turns this back around.
Yeah, I think it all starts with pressure up front. Missing both of their offensive tackles, and Herbert has been hit a lot this season. And so, I think it all starts with being able to win in the trenches, like you said, and then you want to force Herbert to drop back a lot. In their last game, the run game went off. Herbert only had to throw 20 times. They kept him protected. If you can win early downs and force them to drop back, Herbert's awesome, but you can pressure this line. And so you need to see a good game from the Eagles' trenches. And that starts with, resetting the line of scrimmage on run plays. You need to be able to attack downhill. You need a better game from Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean had a poor game.
Yeah.
He did not trust his eyes, and I can't blame him. Ben Johnson had them all in a blender. If Marcus Epps starts in place of Sidney Brown, which he probably should if he's healthy and able, you need him fitting the run downhill hard. And then the real matchup to watch is Cooper DeJean against Ladd McConkey. Because we all know if there's one thing that Cooper DeJean struggles with, it is white guys that play in the slot. Adam Thielen discovered this weakness, but Ladd McConkey, for real, one of my favorite receivers to watch in the league, and he'll takes the majority of the Chargers snaps in the slot, and I think that's going to just be such a fun battle to watch because I think he's incredibly good. He's got really good chemistry with Justin Herbert, and that's just going to be a fun one. So you can file that one away for the passing downs, but it all starts with winning early downs and forcing the Chargers into must-pass situations. So let's flip it over to Eagles offense versus Chargers defense. David, what's your matchup to watch there?
I just want to see them utilize the middle of the field. They did it well. I believe it was the Cowboys game. Is that the game that Hurts was like 15 of 16 throwing between the numbers? So whether he likes it or not, whether they like to employ it or not, it has been effective. Granted, I know the Dallas defense isn't great, but nonetheless, the plays are there to be had. And if they can't utilize that and if they're unable to run, and if the offensive line just is not going to get healthy enough this season to, quite frankly, have the talent on the offensive line to beat the lacking scheme, they're not going to be successful. So they've got to do other things. So I believe Jalen Hurts usually, when challenged with these kinds of scenarios, usually has a flair for the dramatic there and does well. So I'm expecting him to have a big game there. I do think they'll have to utilize that quick throws. They just have to stay disciplined. I mean, they're just like you mentioned what the Chargers have to do against the Eagles defense is win early downs. That's something that Philly hasn't done the entire year. And I know it's mainly off of the, run game being ineffective, but then do these little quick throws, do crossing routes, do something to benefit the run game. Like for the past few years, everything's been predicated off the run game. Well, that's not working. So you're gonna have to do it in reverse now. So I expect them to do that. The 3 extra days not only helps in game planning, but it also with health. And I do think that's a much more beat up team than people realize, especially along the offensive line. There are guys who are on that line who I can promise you should not have been playing 5, 6 games this season. They just did it anyway because they just don't have the depth because so many of the other, I mean, you alluded earlier to the draft class and to the undrafted free agents, Miles Hitton, Cameron Williams, Drew Kendall, you name all these guys who haven't found the field once for whatever reason you want to use, but they just don't have the depth and they haven't been able to develop it. And they didn't get Fred Johnson back. I don't even know where the heck they'd be right now without him. I mean, as poorly as some have thought he's played, he's been a godsend because they'd be in some serious trouble without that. So they're going to have to change their offensive philosophy a little bit, whether they like it or not.
Well, hey, at least the Eagles traded back a half dozen times in the draft to pick up more guys that they don't have roster spots for.
Yeah. Which was a failure, and that's not hindsight. I mean, a lot of us complained about that then, including not getting a tight end.
Yes. A tight end, by the way, that will be playing for the Chargers. In Gatson this week, who has had a phenomenal rookie season. Jackson Hawes with another guy, but
Buffalo.
Anyways, I digress. Ryan, what's your top matchup to watch? Eagles offense versus the Chargers defense.
Are you sure you don't want to just go over the list of tight ends that we could have had?
I mean, don't make me start talking about Nick Sirianni's answer about Grant Calcaterra blocking a defensive end. Because he said, all right, I'll do it. He said, here's the quote. On that play, the one you're talking about, they obviously brought the nickel off the edge and kind of stunted the other guy down in there pretty far inside, which is going to be tough to block regardless of who's right there. Sidebar, from the back angle of the all-22, you can't hardly even see the nickel. That's how uninvolved he is in the total whiff of a block by Grant Calcaterra. And I'm not mad at Grant Calcaterra,
right?
Because if you judge, a fish by its ability to fly, you're kind of stupid, and it's not the fish's fault either. So, whatever. Anyways, I digress. We don't have to talk about tight ends anymore. The Eagles need it. The Eagles need a tight end one.
Wow, they actually need to, involve the tight end one.
Been pretty poor blocker.
He's not the greatest blocker either, but
he used to be. That's one of the other. He's a really good run blocker, but some of it too is like maybe it's the whole predictability thing. I don't know. Anyways, maybe he's doing the Eagles a favor and playing poorly this year, so there's not a market, and he'll re-sign next year on a cheap deal. Anyways, Ryan, your offensive matchup to watch.
Offensive takeaway. It's got to be the run game. Yeah, this defense. They play a 3-4. The dudes up front aren't going to scare you. Obviously they have what's his name? I always forget his name. He is old as dirt.
Give me more.
But very good linebacker. Jeez, why did his name just absolutely escaped me? And I just had it too.
You talking about Khalil Mack?
Khalil Mack, thank you. Wow, yeah, linebacker.
That's why it took me a minute. I was like, is he talking about Khalil Mack?
Yeah. But outside of him and Derwin James, they don't necessarily have studs on the defense. And the run defense, that was about middle of the road. again, I still want them to establish and actually give Saquon the ball and actually give Tank Bigsby, more. He's had one rush in 2 games. Give the kid 5 or 6, 7 or 8, whatever, something. So it's got to be the run game. It's just been so non-existent all year, and then they go through these pockets where they just don't even want to use it, or they get themselves into these situations, and they just they just have to stick with it. And I feel like the first sign of resistance, they just push away from it, and it's so frustrating because the run game is so much more than what you see at that moment. It's a culmination of the entire game, and we'll never know about that because we barely use it in the fourth quarters. Saquon, Tank, whatever, 80-20 split, I don't care. Give Tank a couple more carries. 50-50 is ridiculous, but yeah, run game.
Yeah. You're not going to draw a lot of man coverage against Chargers. They play a league low rate of man coverage, play a lot of cover 2 and a lot of cover 3. So kind of your basic zone coverages. So maybe you'll have a chance to hit some deep balls against cover 3 when they spin to that single high. Maybe you can run the ball when they're too high. We just haven't seen a lot of evidence of them being able to run the ball regardless. And I do think if the run game would get started, everything would feel better. And so, we're going to continue to harp on the run game. There's some things that need to happen in the passing game too. And I don't know. I don't feel good about the offense right now. I don't know how you can. And so I'm with you that I think the run game is the most important matchup to watch. As the run game goes, so goes the offense. And we have a comment here from Drip Drop Drippity. Love that name. He says, I believe Saquon's having a regression because of the sheer volume of usage last year. Would you lower his snaps and give Tank more carries? I wonder why Nick or Patullo doesn't use Tank and Saquon, how Detroit uses their 2 running backs. I would give Tank Bigsby more carries, but it's not anything about Saquon. It's just about a different look and a different running back and rotations. I mean, I think everything about Saquon's struggle this year is not related to Saquon. I see clips of unbelievable 1-yard runs that should have been 4-yard losses by Saquon. Now, I do think there's been an element that started to creep in where he's trying to do too much sometimes, and he does cost himself some yards, but physically speaking, I don't see any evidence of Saquon being worn down physically. I do see some cracks in, him pushing for big plays sometimes because he's just used to nothing being there. And that's still minor, though. I don't think that's happening a lot. So I would like to see Tank Bigsby get a few more carries, but it's not because I think Saquon is actually physically or mentally responsible for really any of the run game struggles. I don't know. Do you guys see that any differently?
No. I mean, even outside runs, like Jordan Mailata has given up a lot of interior pressure this season as well. There were runs in this game where he was designed to run out. Mailata let his man slip in. Saquon has great vision, so he tries to cut it back in immediately. And like you said, he turned what would probably be a 3 or 4 yard loss into a 1-yard gain. And you see that over and over. And we mentioned like the regression of Goddard's run blocking. I think all of it's still tied to Mailata played off of Dickerson. Goddard played off of whatever side he was on. Mailata playing well. Lane Johnson playing well. They all kind of just, played off of each other's strengths and it gave them extra assurance knowing that you had that guy beside them. And collectively, they were great. Individually, they've really struggled.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into our score predictions, player of the game predictions. Ryan, I'll throw it to you first. Give me your score and give me your player of the game.
I think the defense definitely does better this game. And this is definitely one of those weird kind of games where, we've been seeing the struggles, and then, that I wouldn't be surprised if they just actually had a decent game and just kind of surprise everybody and bring everybody back in. But I'll still go with a victory because I still think at the core of it, they are a better team than the Chargers. And Eagles fans still travel really well. It'll be 50-50 probably out there in LA. So I'll go 23-17 Birds. And I'll go a Devontae game.
All right, so Eagles win a semi-low scoring affair, according to Ryan. Devontae Smith, player of the game. David, what about you?
Yeah, if this was a normal turnaround, 6 days, 7 days, like a bunch of them have been this year, I probably would have gone against the Eagles. I went against my gut last week and took the Eagles to beat the Bears, mainly the whole Black Friday thing. I don't know. I guess I got caught up in all the hoopla. But Chicago was ascending. They're creative. They're playing well. Philly has done nothing good. But that being said, I am picking them to win this game. I don't see the Chargers in the same category as a lot of the problems that Chicago posed, mainly their head coach / OC just drawing up, creative play schemes. Again, I mentioned earlier, Jalen Hurts, when everybody doubts him, is normally when he proves them wrong. He loves his phrase, just because he doesn't do it doesn't mean he can't do it. So, and I think we're going to see him do it on Monday Night Football. So I'm picking Jalen Hurts as my player of the game and the Eagles winning 27-25. I don't know where I came up with that score, but I'm going to stick with it.
All right, so a pair of Eagles wins from the guys here. So in the last 4 games since the bye, the Eagles have faced the number 6, number 15, number 31, and number 25 scoring defenses, and they've averaged 15.5 points per game. The Chargers have scored 24 or more in 6 of their last 7 games, and they are the 11th best scoring defense. And so, this will be the second hardest defense that the Eagles have faced since the bye, and they just haven't performed well. And so I think this game comes down to, can the Eagles prevent the Chargers from scoring 14 to 17 points? Like, I think if the Chargers score 17, you probably lose this game. And they've hit 24 in 6 of their last 7 games. And then that you have the one meltdown game against the Jags where they just got blown out, which is really weird. It's something about them and the Jags, man. That was the Herbert 4 interception game, I believe, in the playoffs a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is with them and the Jags, but I'm taking the Chargers in this one. I will not have faith in the Eagles offense until it changes. And I do think the Eagles defense will bounce back, but I think you have to bounce back to holding the Chargers to 14 points. And that's going to be tough to do, especially if you're not able to get pressure. So I will take the Chargers. We'll go 21-10. 21-10 Chargers. And I will give, I guess, if I'm picking the Chargers, I got to pick a Charger for player of the game. So I guess I'll go Kamani Vidal. He's only gone over 100 yards in one of his last 4 games, but one of the others was 95. He's coming off of a strong performance against the Raiders. Obviously, the Eagles are not the Raiders, but I could see them really trying to lean on a ground game after what they saw the Bears do to the Eagles. So I'll take Vidal for my player of the game. So there you have it, folks. Our top takeaways from Black Friday. Our preview of Monday. Again, it's really weird to go from a Friday game to a Monday game, but that's where we're at. I think we get a Sunday game after this before we go to a Saturday game or something like that.
Yeah. Raiders is Sunday.
Yeah, because it's back-to-back short weeks. We go a Monday to a Saturday, or Monday to a Sunday, and then a Sunday to a Saturday. So the Eagles will have back-to-back short weeks after this one. So just a gross schedule this time around, but that's all right. Our schedule remains unchanged. We'll be here every Tuesday night breaking down the Eagles, previewing the next game. Before we get out of here, David, I'll throw it to you first for final thoughts and plugs. The floor is yours.
Yeah, my final thought, we didn't touch on it. 2 quick things. The availability of Slay. I don't know if he'd find his way on the field, but I would like to have him back, if for nothing else, a mentor role just in the cornerback room, maybe in the what they thought Jair Alexander role was going to be. I know Quinyon has mentioned it over and over and over the past 2 years how much he benefited from his mentorship. So I think, strangely enough, the biggest competition for him is probably the Lions, the two other team he played for. But I'd like him back. And lastly, egging houses is ridiculous. You can dislike Kevin Patullo. It was bad enough this season how I've seen fans behave and curse and yell at his family and his parents at almost every game the last 6-7 weeks. It's absolutely ludicrous. And now you're invading their private space. You've caused his wife fear, his daughter, his children, him. It's just unacceptable. Anybody who applauds that type of behavior is just as poor. I mean, it's just you can have disagreements and not like somebody, but that's just a step too far. And it's an embarrassment, quite frankly, for everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Go hold a sign outside of the NovaCare if you want to.
Right. That's fine.
But at the point where even trying to find where somebody lives, that's obviously ridiculous. Ryan, final thoughts from you or anything you want to plug?
Yeah. I've really been noticing it this season, and I get that it can happen, but I'm honestly noticing that there's a large portion of Eagles fans that have grown soft. Honestly, that forget the days of the early '90s, or the '90s in general, where were not very good for most of the decade, and remember people forget the bad times. And we've had such success over these last couple of years that the first sign of a little bit of times, people are losing their minds. It's really sad to see. I don't know whether if it's more of a younger generation who just hasn't experienced, living as an Eagles fan in the 80s and I know Crabby Oldman is somewhere saying that these the 60s, 70s, but it's serious. Like, we're in the best period of Eagles football. Stop, stop acting like this. I mean, to kind of go off and piggyback off of the Patullo news and stuff. It's come on, like that's ridiculous. We're 8-4. We're still leading our division. Listen, I understand that it doesn't look great. I understand that, this team had expectations, and this team is supposed to go back to back. But guess what? Things happen. And if they don't, it's not going to be the end of the world. But acting like that and I just get this mopey vibe around people that are just like, I know people that are like, the Eagles are going to lose every game. They're going to lose the division. They're going to first round bye or first round exit. I'm selling the tickets. Like, what happened to this fan base? And again, it's not the majority of people. It's just a large portion that I've been noticing, whether it's in person, whether it's social media or what. But man, the F up. This is a long season. Okay, if you can't handle the ups and downs of a season, maybe football isn't for you. But you have no idea how bad it can get. If this is your complaining, if you're complaining about this, you have no idea. So buck up there, kiddos. It's going to be a wild ride at the end of the season. Whatever happens, we're still fans. This is still the team that we root for and we'll always root for. So quit being so soft.
All right. There you go. Quit. Maybe we should give that the podcast title. Quit being so soft. Everybody will think we're talking about the offensive line, though.
Absolutely.
All right. Good stuff there. Be sure you are following these guys on Twitter. They put out lots of good stuff. Ryan's pointing off to the side for some reason. Now he's pointing down.
Pointing to David. Am I not pointing to David now?
You're on my screen. You are on the bottom row, and David and I are on top.
I don't know. Right on me, so I'm pointing to David, and now I'm pointing down to you. And
that's so weird that it also like flips the layout sometimes when I go live, and I don't know why it does that. So who knows? I don't know how it works. I just know that it works. And I'm speaking, of course, of our podcasting software, not the Eagles offense, which does not work. And I know why it doesn't work and how to fix it, but I digress. So yeah, take the extra time off here. Watch some good football on Sunday. maybe some conference championships on Saturday. It's conference championship weekend, right? I think it is.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Watch some good football this weekend and then gear up, be ready for an Eagles matchup at SoFi on Monday Night Football. Whatever happens, we will be here to break it all down next week. Hopefully we'll be breaking down an Eagles win. It'd be nice to go back to the old intro of a Victory Tuesday. We'll see if we're able to do that. But that is going to about do it for this episode. Thank you guys for joining, hanging out with us on Tuesday nights. We always look forward to it. Again, be sure you're following these guys on Twitter. David is at David Neese PHL. Ryan is at Philly Sports PSA. I am at Shane Half NFL. And we will catch you guys next time.